Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service for our webinar, The Afghan Crisis, How to Help Our Neighbors. My name is Andrew Steele, and I serve as the Vice President for Development and Outreach here at LIRS. We are so grateful to all of you for joining us today. Over the last week or so, we have all been devastated by the images, stories, and accounts of tragedy and pain in Afghanistan. We at LIRS have been blessed to witness the true good in people from all around the world. The response from individuals, congregations, corporations, foundations, and others has been truly inspiring. On behalf of my colleagues and all those we serve, I wish to express our sincere thanks to all of you for your care, compassion, and your action. Thank you to those of you who have already registered to volunteer with us. Thank you to those of you who have already made generous gifts and donations to support our work of welcome. And thank you in advance to all those of you who are considering what to do to help make the long welcome possible. Today, we want to help you understand more about the situation and provide real, tangible ways you can help. Of course, things continue to change daily, and as time progresses, our needs will continue to grow. And that is why this is a movement of compassion, a movement of caring for the stranger, a movement of doing the right thing. Now, before we get started, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items for us. This session is being recorded and it will be circulated after the event. We encourage you to share it with your family members, friends, colleagues, and places of worship. We're also live streaming on Facebook right now, so you can like that video or share it for your social media network to follow along. There will be a question and answer section towards the end of the program. Please, at any point, feel free to submit your questions via our Zoom Q&A box at the bottom of your screens. And a final note, this will be one of LIRS's many discussions around the crisis in Afghanistan and our response in welcoming those arriving to the US. I hope you'll continue to stay engaged. And you can do so through our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the handle @LIRS.org, as well as through our website, www.lirs.org. Now I'd like to invite Rubina Ali, a friend to LIRS and a senior communications specialist at Islamic Relief USA, as well as Chelsea Johnson, network organizer for LIRS and a lifelong Lutheran, to lead us in our opening interfaith prayer for solidarity with Afghanistan.
Hello, I'm gonna open. Eternal God, creator of the universe, there is no God but you. Great and wonderful are your works, wondrous are your ways. Thank you for the many ways we affirm your presence and purpose and the freedom to do so.
During this crisis time in Afghanistan, may we defend that we are one human family. Forgive our violation of your creation. We stand in awe and gratitude for your persistent love for each of your children.
As we hear the cries of our brothers and sisters, may we be people of compassion, working ceaselessly to create a path from desperation to hope. Open our hearts to understand that we are all made in your image and seek to know and follow your ways, to praise you and to be instruments of your presence.
Protect all those who seek safety amid chaos. Hold them amid their fears and pain. You are our strength. Forgive our violence towards one another. Stir hearts to accompany all those who suffer, to heal and rebuild.
Grant to all and our leaders attributes of the strong, mutual respect in words and deed, restraint in the exercise of power, and the will for peace with justice for all.
Eternal God, creator of the universe, there is no God but you. Amen.
Okay, thank you everyone for attending this webinar. We were really amazed by the thousands who registered and everyone who has been reaching out and asking how you can help. My name is Kristen and I'm the CEO of Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. So LIRS is the largest faith-based US nonprofit dedicated to immigration and refugees. Since 2009, we've resettled nearly 10,000 Afghan allies. So in the past week and a half, we have been met with an overwhelming outpouring of support, including nearly 40,000 volunteers who come through the LIRS website. And candidly, I wish that the situation in Afghanistan was not the reason that we've been brought together. But the fact is that we are living through one of the worst humanitarian crises of our lifetime. I don't need to tell you how devastating the situation in Afghanistan is. We have all seen the heartbreaking images coming out of Kabul. We've mourned the loss of life of our Afghan allies and of innocent children who fell victim to the desperation of those trying to flee. And for many Afghans, being left behind may amount to a death sentence, not just for them, but for their families as well. And in particular, for the special immigrant visa applicants who faithfully served alongside US troops, they remain in grave danger. Just weeks ago, a former interpreter was stopped at a Taliban checkpoint, identified as a US collaborator, and was brutally beheaded. I fear especially for the Afghan women and girls who had made such significant strides in education and employment and who may be forced back into their lives as second-class citizens or worse. This is not the time for I told you so's, but this was a preventable crisis. We had been advocating for a full-scale evacuation of our allies and their families for months now. It was clear to anyone with passing familiarity of the bureaucratic maze that is the special immigrant visa process that it wasn't going to be agile enough to respond to the need. We've been screaming from the rooftops for months that we needed to get these allies to Guam or some other US territory. We've evacuated allies to US territory throughout our history, and there's no reason to have strayed from a tried and true model of processing them. If this is the best our nation can do to move allies to safety, we've abjectly failed to live up to our values and obligations. We fought side by side for 20 years. Surely we can lead side by side. No matter your feelings on the war, the undeniable truth is that we had both the means and the time to save those in danger. And yet we neglected to act in a meaningful way. And I stress that only to own what we owe our allies, because we still have time. It's not too late. The progress in evacuation in the past few days has been encouraging, and we hope to continue to see the high rates of 20,000 evacuated, as we've seen in the most recent days. President Biden's decision, though, today not to extend the deadline past August 31st is discouraging, but we must continue to press the administration to evacuate as many of these allies and our other vulnerable populations as possible. The United States cannot pat itself on the back for a job half done. President Biden must continue the evacuation until all US citizens, Afghan allies, and other extremely vulnerable Afghans have reached safety. We swore a sacred oath to protect them when they risked their lives to protect us. We cannot break that in the 11th hour, because this is who we are as Americans. This has not been easy, and it will not get any easier. This is a historic effort, but we are living in a historic time. We've done this before. After the fall of Saigon, the US evacuated 130,000 Vietnamese. LIRS ourselves, we went from a 4-staffer small nonprofit to a more than 100-staff crisis response organization. In 1 year, we resettled 17,000 refugees. We've done this before, and we can do it again. Today, the evacuation of our allies has had nearly unprecedented bipartisan support. We are a nation of welcome. And I know that personally because I was 9 months old when my parents fled a country entering civil war and came to the US. Despite the odds stacked against us, we will do everything in our power to support and welcome our Afghan neighbors. Because at the end of the day, we must admit these Afghan allies, not because they are Americans, but because we are Americans. And with that, I'll pause and turn it over to Jo Marie Bussell.
Thank you, Krish. We are grateful for your leadership and the clarity of your moral voice at this time. With respect to advocacy, LIRS is a core leader in a coalition called Evacuate Our Allies, which has been advocating for emergency evacuation since April of this year. We, along with our coalition, sent requests to the administration on May 12th and organized sign-on letters from 70 NGOs to the administration asking for evacuation. On May 6th, we met with the National Security Council staff members. We published our plan for evacuation on July 24th, and LIRS held with our coalition partners a rally in front of the White House on July 1st. Initially, our coalition's primary focus was calling for the evacuation of Afghan wartime allies who were stuck in that years-long bureaucratic process. As the crisis escalated, we expanded our advocacy to seek protections for broad categories of at-risk Afghans, including all SIV applicants, special immigrant visa applicants, and their families, immigrant visa applicants, which include family members of US citizens, P2 referrals, which you'll hear about later, women's rights activists, human rights defenders, religious minorities, and LGBTQ individuals. The Biden administration had more than enough time to plan and execute an evacuation before the situation on the ground reached the crisis point, which is where we are today. As you may have seen on television, the situation in Kabul is extremely tenuous, and the security situation around the airport is violent. One of the most dangerous places in Kabul right now is outside the airport, with Taliban and other actors present. People have died in crushed crowds. They have been beaten with chains, tear gassed, shot, and killed by Taliban right outside of the airport, the only means of escape for so many. While our troops currently have control of the airport and tens of thousands of people have made it out on evacuation flights, we understand there are currently 13,000 people still there inside that perimeter and trying to get on a plane, with tens of thousands more elsewhere in need of protection. The highest priority for evacuation flight seats right now are US citizens and lawful permanent residents. Sadly, many of them, our own citizens and green card holders and their families, have been turned away. Other extremely vulnerable Afghans have waited with them for days in unsanitary conditions with little or no food or water to be turned around back out into that violence. Despite all of this, we remain steadfast in our advocacy for vulnerable Afghans who are now faced with the Taliban's rule and a rapidly closing door of opportunity to leave. Today, the Taliban said they will not allow any more Afghans to leave, and the president has indicated he intends to hold fast on the August 31st departure date, despite the pleas of vulnerable Afghans and the overwhelming support of Americans. Sadly, our NATO partners will pull out when we do. And when that door shuts, we need to be prepared for what happens now and in the days ahead. For the brave and vulnerable Afghans who have managed to make it out to the United States, we assert that they should be eligible for the benefits they would have been eligible for had the administration not delayed its evacuation efforts. Our coalition is helping to introduce 2 legislative priorities to ensure Afghans are eligible for resettlement services, and that Congress creates a high-ranking position in government to look out for the interests and towards the protection of wartime allies, so that no generation of veterans or wartime allies will have to relive this. It was never the question of whether we should leave Afghanistan. It's always been the question of how we leave. We must not abandon our allies. We must keep our promise and honor our commitments to protect both vulnerable Afghan lives and our veterans from this moral injury. We ask that you join us in our advocacy efforts by calling on the President to keep evacuation channels open and members of Congress to support these important initiatives. And we ask you to join us in this whole of society response. Now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Megan Breesy, LIRS's Director for Refugee and Migrant Services. Megan?
Thank you so much, Jill. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to give you a little update on where we are with resettlement and ways in which you can help, which I know so many of you are eager to do. And we are so grateful for that. So to date, we have resettled about 2,000 Afghan folks who have arrived to the US on the evacuated flights. This started at the end of July, and most of our clients are going to California, to Northern Virginia in the DC area, to Washington State, and to Texas. LIRS is lucky to have a very strong network of over 33 resettlement offices around the country who are ready to support this effort. Our role is to welcome and to provide basic needs and enrollment in programs and other services for ongoing support to help our Afghan allies to gain independence and connection in their community. We now are preparing to welcome the next wave of nearly 50,000 Afghans who are being evacuated as we speak. And unlike the refugees that we typically serve, these folks will enter the US under humanitarian parole, which is a status that limits access to any sort of public benefit or service funded by the federal government. We will be able to offer a 90-day reception service through the federal support, but that is simply not enough. The resettlement of this group of allies will require the American people's generosity of heart. We are already so encouraged by the outpouring of care, and we are coming to you and we are asking for more. We need monetary donations so that we can provide ongoing services to help people get their first jobs, to provide case management to those who are especially vulnerable or traumatized, and legal services to help with applications for asylum. We've seen lots of big families, lots of babies and small children, and we anticipate many will have health needs that will require immediate care. We need your offers of housing and teams to help set up apartments. We need volunteers and co-sponsors, as we call them, or those who want to walk alongside these families to provide long-term support, to be their friends, and to help them navigate their new life here. We need to extend a hand in welcome, and we need champions who will help us create welcoming communities across the country. Now I am pleased to introduce Salah Ansari, our director from Lutheran Community Services Northwest. Salah, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being with you here. My colleague Jill, when she talked about with her update, I just remembered when I was in Washington, D.C., was July 1. Participated in a rally, and one of my pleading with the administration at that time in my remarks, I said, let's not repeat what happened in Vietnam. And of course, this is an incredible man-made calamity that has fallen on the poor Afghans right now. I'm dismayed, I'm angry, and profoundly sad. I have been involved in refugee resettlement since the time when I actually assisted my own family in 1980 to relocate here in Portland. I left Afghanistan in 1978. I left the country because of the fast political changes and the coup that took place that unraveled that poor country. And it's now 43 years that the poor country is in turmoil. somehow that important country is somehow cursed. But obviously, didn't expect that after this many years, once again, I'll be facing the challenges of not only on the receiving end, having folks from a country that I love, a country that I was born and raised my formidable years until age 25, and to face these challenges. At the same time, this is also for me a trigger because I left in situation after the bloody coup that took place in 1978. So the brutality of, I'm still reminded of the brutality of that regime at that time. And obviously then the Soviet invaded Afghanistan. And then my entire family fled the country, went to Pakistan at the time, which then I was able to assist and bring him here in the States. One of the things that is heart-wrenching and incredibly painful for me is the number of people, I don't know, some of them, how they got my number and how they're sending their documents right and left to me from Afghanistan. And I've been in communication with a couple of these folks because I know they have all the proper documentation in terms of the glowing recommendations from the US Army for this interpreter that had worked with them. And now he's trying to get out with his family, his mother and several siblings, and he's stuck. Last night he called me that a neighbor who has a US passport wants to get out. Can I just go with them? While I have done everything that I could do from here, Senator Wyden's office is involved in that. But I said, no, maybe you could wait a couple more days. Don't leave your family. Maybe the entire family might be evacuated. But he said, the time is running out. I don't know what to do. I don't want to leave my family, but my mother is saying that you need to run away because apparently there was one interpreter, although whether it's accurate information or not, things are in a state of total chaos. But one interpreter was beheaded, is in the hands of Taliban yesterday, as he mentioned. I have so many of these folks. I have a family that father that left 8 children, and he came and he was in the process of getting his children. And the paperwork that was done, he came to my office and said, what can I do now? My children they were with a relative. And now there's no embassy. What happens to my papers and all of that? So these are the stories that I get, and I wish I could help every single one of these individuals. I just reminded of that movie Schindler's List, and this individual that is trying to get as many people out of the hands of Nazis. And but my limitation is such that I cannot do anything, unfortunately, but it breaks my heart. And of course, he told me that there's no way we can get to the airport because the parameters are all, as you have heard on the news, is in the hands of Taliban. And the airport, just like the US is really a prisoner just around the airport and they cannot do anything. How could people go through these checkpoints? Some of them without any documents because they had not gathered their documents because this thing happened so swiftly. And so my worries are beyond the 31st. when people are still trying to get out. They have no options other than fleeing the country, go to Pakistan, which in itself is a tragedy of who's supporting the Taliban, or neighboring countries, Iran, or up north, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. These are the countries. And of course, Turkey has already announced that they will not accept any of the refugees from Afghanistan. It just, once again, it reminds me of refugees when the country was invaded by the Soviet army at the time, and 3-4 million refugees in Pakistan, and 3 million in Iran. I think there's going to be, unfortunately, massive movement of folks. Yes, close to 80,000. I don't know. I don't have the accurate number that are leaving Afghanistan. Some of them are being evacuated. I don't know beyond the evacuation what happens to people. Obviously, they need to leave the country. If the Taliban then seals off the border, then people have to flee. And you know that what that means. It means people will endanger their lives and find smugglers to smuggle them out, just like happened years ago with my own family. Is that the option that will take? So it's this enormous tragedy and sadness and overwhelming. But here in Oregon, obviously, I'm so grateful of the congressional delegation, Senator Merkley, Senator Wyden, Congressman Blumenauer in the state of Washington. Obviously, we've been in contact with Senator Patty Murray. And these individuals, they have staff that we are sending out as much information as we have about some of these cases that are now stranded. And they have been incredibly helpful. State of Oregon, both state of Washington have been welcoming states. And obviously our agency has resettled close to 45,000 refugees in the Northwest since 1975. Of course, the Fall of Saigon, refugees from Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos. It took more than 15 years or more. Anyway, I could go on and on. Sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't pay attention to the.
Salah, I just wanted to tell you, with tears in my eyes, I know I'm supposed to speak next, how different it is to hear from the voice of someone who truly understands from a personal experience. So I want to thank you for your witness.
Oh, thank you.
To introduce myself, my name is Kristen. My name is Kristen Whitty, and I am the Director for Outreach, and I am honored to be a colleague of Salah. Too many times I have watched the news, and this is a true confession, and I think it directly ties to what Salah was just saying. This is something that has been going on for a long time, so I'm grateful that he just segued to me. Too many times I have watched the news and I have seen pain of someone else that seems so far away, and I have personally said, God, why don't you do something, Lord? Why don't you do something about this horrific situation? And after prayer, I have sadly realized, friends, that God does respond to my everyday question of why don't you do something about Afghanistan? He responds with, I did, I created you. You were created to love. You were created to do something and not just sit with sympathy at those. We are one human family, which means we have to step up and do something. Let's stop just listening and accompany and companion and be there and walk the road to Emmaus for the long welcome. To do so, to join us, LIRS is going to equip you in ways you never even saw coming. We want you to join us for the long welcome with resources, educational tools, action opportunities. At LIRS, we use something called the ADAPT model. And as you're part of this webinar, you are going to receive a follow-up email with all of the resources that I am about to do and talk about. So you don't even have to write them down, and they will come right to your inbox so that you can do something, and you can do it quickly, and you can invest, and you can make sure that what you're interested in doing is really what you feel called to do. I know the statement, actions speak louder than words, has been overused and overused, but you know what? Let's act, and let's act fast. Let's start with an ADAPT. The first letter of ADAPT is ACT. In ADAPT, we talk a lot about acting as volunteers, giving support, being the hands on the ground. For the past week, we've been calling for volunteers to help support the incoming Afghan allies. Thank you. Thank you to everyone who signed up to welcome families arriving at the airport, to set up apartments, to help with transportation, and so much more. We have received over 30,000 volunteer applications from across the country, and we're not done yet. We need as many volunteers as we can get, because we are not only inspired by your generosity, by your hospitality, we are hopeful because of you. Our partners on the ground are quickly working, wait for it, to vet and train 30,000 people who have signed on to volunteer. If you're interested in volunteering, please sign up. It's on our main page, and you will have seen it and heard it a million times during this webinar and after. lirs.org/help now. We appreciate that while things are in the news, it's exciting to say you want to help. But LIRS has the dedication to say it's not just about the moment when this is the hot issue. This is who we are. And we're going to do the long welcome. We'll be here not just for 30 days, not just until people lose interest on the news. We're going to be here for the long haul. So we're inviting communities. We're inviting our friends. We're inviting people who have never worked with us before to sign on to consider to do what my amazing colleague Megan has already laid out, which is that long welcome. Are you and your congregation and your family willing to invest in the long welcome, companion of family for the longer term? Help them to become a part of the community. Help them to understand that they are loved. This involves everything from volunteering to teach English to working with local businesses for employment opportunities. We need to set families up for success, not just welcome them with a sign. We're better than that. We're called to do more. If you're a member of a congregation and you want to be part of this, there's a section, an even little box in the volunteer section that says Circle of Welcome Community Sponsorship, which means your congregation or your community wants to take an Afghan family and make it a part of your family. This is a huge commitment, but you know what? We're never called on God to do things small. We're called on God to answer the question, why is this happening? Lord, how could you let this happen? The next thing I really have to highlight is the fact that donate. We recognize that not everyone can volunteer. That's where your donations can make just as much of an impact, because when Afghan allies and families arrive as walk-ins, they have no money typically. They have nowhere to stay. They have nothing to eat. There are no diapers that magically appear. So Unfortunately, there's about a 5 to 7 day gap between when families arrive and the services they're eligible to receive. So we need your help. We need your help with the Neighbors in Need Afghan Allies Fund. This will provide food, housing assistance, clothing, and other basic needs as they await official services. Please help us stock pantries in the most modest apartments where refugees will be when they arrive. Please help us do it with culturally familiar food when everything else is unfamiliar and frightening. Your donation might not feel as tangible to you, but it will be tangible to them. You've just heard from Jill Marie Bussey, who is the Director for Advocacy at LIRS, and her incredible work and passion has really informed our organization about how rapidly the situation is changing. But our ask remains the same, and your voice is critical. Join us in calling for protection. Join us in calling for evacuation for those who have put their lives on the line for our country. I find it interesting that often when people talk about prayer, they talk about it as if it's a fallback, when you can't do anything else. I disagree, and I disagree from the core of who I am. I believe that prayer is a powerful weapon against hate and hopelessness and fear. As a faith-based organization, we believe deeply in the power of meditation, reflection, and prayer to help guide our time in doing that over the next couple of weeks. We've created a massive downloadable interfaith prayer toolkit, Solidarity and Sacred Silence for Afghanistan, for people to use with their congregations and their communities. I'll be praying through it with my family. This toolkit equips individuals and communities to enter into a time of sacred silence for Afghanistan, and to do that through reflection and guided prayer. Additionally, communities will also have a Christian solidarity prayer vigil and an interfaith solidarity prayer vigil that they can engage with the people in the pews and online. 1 week from today, on Tuesday, August 31st at 4 p.m., we'll be doing an online interfaith prayer service. We want to hold space on the 31st for ourselves and for our Afghan neighbors. It will honor the struggle of our Afghan neighbors and acknowledge the difficult emotions that people are feeling. Last but not least, we have a number of teaching resources. We have one about the culture, the resources, the conflict, and recipes even for Afghanistan. Help your family, help your community to better understand the people who will be joining us. Explore their culture through worship and food and music. And do all of that through a story of another family, the Abdullah family. We have videos that explain the special immigrant visa process, and we have resources like the Hope for Afghan Allies Toolkit. For Christian communities, we invite you to take a look at the Emmaus Toolkit, which is a discernment guide for Christian communities to figure out how are we called to help refugees who are coming and migrants who are coming in to our country, to pray, to learn more, and to discern how to welcome. Friends, I implore you to think and pray about ways you can take action now. Please go to our website. There are so many options and so many resources. Don't just let the webinar and your interest be where you stop. You're here for a reason. You're excited. You know that somewhere in your heart, you were called to do something. And now I ask you to consider that the do something isn't just in this moment, but it could be in the year to follow and more. Now I turn this over to Krish Omera Vignaraja, our CEO and President.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristen, for that passion. I know that there are a number of questions coming in. Really so grateful for the thousands who have joined this webinar. So I'm going to try to respond as quickly as possible and include some of my colleagues. Obviously, if you need to hop off, of course, do so, and the recording will be available. We'll be sending that out in an email. So I'll just quickly go through a few questions. So if we signed up to volunteer, when should we hear something in the response about next steps? So candidly, we have staff who are deployed at Fort Lee in Virginia, Fort Bliss in Texas. We obviously have received Afghan families already. And this is a work in progress where we're expecting in the next few days, in the next few weeks, that these families who are on the military bases will be entering into communities across the country. So as we identify the number of families that are being resettled and how quickly we need to deploy staff, you will certainly be hearing in the next few days, week or two. There are going to be certain areas that will receive an immediate influx because there are family ties to that region. There's an Afghan community existing, but we are also going to be encouraging and informing these families in terms of other areas where they may not know much about a state or a city, but we know that there are so many welcoming communities really all across the country. Another couple questions asked about the children. I know so many of us have seen children being cradled by soldiers. So one question that I'll frame this issue in is, are any organizations working on foster care or adoption for child orphans or refugees? Great question. So LIRS is actually one of the two organizations that work with what we call unaccompanied refugee minors. So we anticipate that there will be children who will arrive as unaccompanied children. We are still in conversations with the federal agencies to determine whether these are children who are coming alone and literally have no parents or family, or in the last several days of the evacuation, perhaps they were separated from family. And so we'll be working with the federal agencies, but in the interim, the care that we provide is called transitional foster care. So these are safe, small, family-centric homes, foster care parents who are willing to take in children for a few weeks in the case of those who are going to reunify with a parent, or for those who don't have parents, they will be eligible for unaccompanied refugee status, as we believe. Again, this is a lot of things are kind of being sorted out by the State Department at the moment. And so we work with these children, we provide care for them. And so if you do want to learn more about our transitional foster care program, our long-term foster care program, and the work that we do with unaccompanied refugee minors, please do indicate that when you communicate through the LIRS website. Another set of questions were about, do you need to be Lutheran or a Christian? And I just want to be clear. So I myself am not Lutheran. I'm a Hindu. My husband's a Catholic. We are not proselytizing through this work. We are a national nonprofit 501c3. It's just that our roots are very much Lutheran. We have congregations and non-faith communities that support us. So please know that there is no faith litmus test. If there had been, I'm not sure that I would have passed. We just believe that fundamentally this work of welcome is who we are as a nation. For some, it's a matter of faith. For others, it is not. Another question that we got was about how can businesses help? And really appreciate this question, because one of the things that LIRS has done has been focused on economic empowerment and workforce development. So yes, of course, we want to make sure that there is robust assistance programs in those first few days, first few weeks as these families arrive. But we know that they're skilled. They have a skill set, and there are a number of employers who are reaching out, would love to collaborate with anyone who wants to discuss our workforce development programming, because we need employers to step up. We need employers to recognize that these individuals, these families, they're incredible, they're reliant, they're ambitious, they're industrious. And so we'd love to stay in touch with you in that respect. We want businesses to be employers. We want businesses who may have an ability to provide in-kind donations. There's a range of supplies that we're going to need: hygiene kits, diapers, food donations, furniture, We just launched a partnership with Airbnb, knowing that affordable housing is an issue. And then the next question is actually related to this one, which is, does LRS have a program for donated airline miles, any insight into miles for migrants? So we actually partner with them. So it is a great way in which we are continuing to explore if there is an opportunity to relocate Afghans. Right now, the airport is obviously under US military control, but there have been some charter and private flights that have come in and out. And so that is an avenue that we are pursuing, working with migrants, miles for migrants, as well as with airlines. Another question was, what is the situation for advocates for women's rights? Have any of those arrived in the US and are they being helped? So yes, this is a critical issue that we are focused on. We know that gender rights activists, women and girls are being targeted simply for who they are. There is an avenue to come to the US, not necessarily through the special immigrant visa program, because that is meant typically for interpreters, translators, drivers, engineers who worked for the US or on behalf of the US. But there is a program through the traditional refugee resettlement program that would allow vulnerable Afghans to enter the US. That is through the P2 program. And so we are working very hard, recognizing that under Taliban control, we are deeply concerned about how their rights will be affected. Another set of questions were about how do we get our city listed as a possible destination? Is this something that we need to work through state governors? So historically, what we have seen is that SIVs will come to kind of in larger numbers to California, to Texas, to the DC metro area, including Virginia and Maryland, Pennsylvania. But candidly, we are going to see an influx of Afghan families, individuals, to communities all across the country. And so our hope is to be able to show through community co-sponsorship that we have the capacity to resettle tens of thousands of individuals. And so that's where, if you please can communicate with us through the website, we can identify those locations where we can say to the State Department, who we are in regular conversations with, look, there is a city or a rural area or an area that may not historically have accepted that significant numbers of Afghan allies, but there's a real opportunity because we have an ecosystem of individuals, businesses, nonprofits, community-based resources that we can plug into. So I will pause there. I know, Kristen, if there's any other critical questions that we want to ask now, happy to take those as well. I know that another set of questions we've been getting are on housing. So obviously, affordable housing is a critical issue. We have really appreciated those who have approached us saying, I have a vacant apartment, I have rooms in our house. I just want to set expectations. So based on the conversations that we have had with Afghan families, understandably, they've gone through so much. There is a preference for trying to have independent living. Obviously, we want to make sure that these families do have a roof over their heads. And so it's going to be critically important to find whatever the housing inventory we can make available is. But this is going to be a key challenge, especially as I've described the key markets. We know that there is a significant shortage. So we're working on this issue. As I mentioned, we're working with companies like Airbnb as well. Please continue to offer up housing that you may have available to us, because we are cataloging all of that. We will be in touch, but please have patience, because this is a matter of trying to understand the needs, having conversations with the families directly, and trying to match their preferences against the inventory that we have. So I will pause there. I know that there's going to be a lot more questions that we intend to try to categorize and respond to by email and follow up to this. But I will hand it over to Kristen and Andrew in terms of if there's any additional questions we want to answer.
Well, thanks, Chris, so much. And thank you to everyone who joined us for this important conversation. And now it is really our time to roll up our sleeves and get to work. As Chris mentioned, thank you for your grace and patience as we continue to build up the infrastructure for this work of welcome. So if you sign up to register to volunteer and get into our system, we'll be ready to engage with you that way. Be sure to follow up and follow us on social media and visit our website at lrs.org/helpnow for updates, to make a gift, to register to volunteer, and to learn more ways that you can help. And as a reminder, we will be sending you all these resources mentioned in a follow-up email, including a recording of this webinar so that you can have it and share it with your network. From all of us at LRS, thanks again for tuning in. We hope to see you again soon. Take good care.